You are just an uncultured chef. You think you can use your food to chase after our wealthy men? True class cannot be bought with money, ma'am. I can walk out on my own.
The contract had taken 8 months to land. 8 months of proposals, tastings, revisions, and a final presentation Caitlin had rehearsed until her voice went flat. Daejeon Group's annual charity gala. 500 guests. Every plate had to be perfect. Min-jae had kissed her forehead that morning and told her she didn't need to go personally.
She went anyway.
That was who she was. The kitchen hummed the way she liked it, controlled chaos. Every station moving, nobody standing still. Her team had transformed the Daejeon Grand Ballroom service corridor into something surgical. Caitlin had changed out of her gown an hour ago. Black chef's coat. Hair pulled back. She was where she belonged. Then Park Sung-woo plated the wrong order. She saw it before he did. Seo Yun Kang's table had requested the sea base. Sung-woo was walking out with the lamb. Sung-woo. Her voice was quiet, controlled. Stop. He didn't hear her. She followed him to the threshold of the VIP corridor just as a sharp voice cracked through the murmur of wealth and music. Excuse me. Excuse me. Is there nobody managing this? Caitlin stepped through the door. Seo Yun Kang stood in a black Valentino gown that probably cost more than Caitlin's first commercial kitchen. Her hair was pinned back. Her jaw was set. She was the kind of beautiful that had been maintained, not born. Dermatologists, lighting, and the unshakable confidence of a woman who had never once been told no. She looked at the plate. She looked at Sung-woo. Then she looked at Caitlin. Her eyes moved slowly. The chef coat, the dark skin, the natural hair tucked under a cap. Something shifted in her expression, a door closing. Are you in charge?
Seo Yun asked.
Yes. Caitlin kept her voice even. I apologize for the mix-up. The correct dish is being plated right now. I didn't ask about the dish. Seo Yun tilted her head. I asked who let you into the VIP section. The room didn't go quiet. It went still. I'm the head of the catering team, Caitlin said. We hold the contracted service for tonight's event. Seo Yun looked at her the way someone looks at a word they don't recognize. Then her eyes dropped to Caitlin's wrist. The bracelet. White gold. 3 stones. Min-jae had clasped it on her wrist himself 6 months ago in a hotel suite in Jeju while rain hit the windows, and he said, I choose you before he said anything else. Seo Yun's expression changed completely. That bracelet, she said slowly, is a Kong family piece. Drop a comment right now. Did Seo Yun just notice what I think she noticed? My lovelies, tell me what you think is coming. And if you're new here, subscribe. You do not want to miss where this goes. It was a gift, Caitlin said. From whom? That's not relevant to the service issue. Security. Seo Yun didn't raise her voice.
She didn't need to.
2 men in earpieces appeared within seconds. This woman needs to be removed. She's not on the staff list. I'm the contractor. Remove her. Phones came up. Caitlin counted at least 7 before she stopped counting. The room had found its entertainment for the evening. She stood straight. She did not move until the security guard touched her arm, and then she walked, because being dragged was not something she would give them. Women like you, Seo Yun said, loud enough for every recording to catch it, always think a rich man is your lottery ticket. The comment section was going to destroy her. Caitlin didn't think that. She just walked. Through the corridor. Past the kitchen where Sung-woo stood with his mouth open. Through the service exit. Into the night. It was raining. She stood under the awning for 30 seconds, then stepped into it. The cold hit her shoulders, and she let it. Her phone was already at her ear. Straight to voicemail. Board meeting. No signal. He told you that this morning. She called again. Voicemail. She lowered the phone and looked at the street. Black cars. Yellow lights bleeding into wet asphalt. Soul moving without her. A city that did not know she existed. For the first time in 2 years with Min-jae Kang, one thought surfaced that she had never let herself think before. Maybe his world was never built for someone like me. She put the phone in her pocket. She didn't cry. She just stood there in the rain while the gala went on without her. 500 people eating food she made, none of them knowing her name. My lovelies, that last line. Tell me what you felt. And before you go anywhere, subscribe, because the next scene is where we find out exactly who Min-jae Kang is and why Seo Yun just made the most expensive mistake of her life. Min-jae Kang did not lose his temper in public.
It was not discipline.
It was his structure. He had learned early that the loudest man in the room was always the most afraid. So he had trained himself to go quiet when everything in him wanted to break something. He was very quiet right now. His phone had 18 missed calls. 16 from numbers he didn't recognize, press, probably. Someone had posted a video. It was already moving. 2 from Caitlin. He watched the video first. 34 seconds. Seo Yun's voice was clear. The phones around her were steady. Caitlin's back was straight the entire time. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, walked out like she was choosing to leave. That was the thing about Caitlin. She never let them see it land. He knew it landed. He called her. She picked up on the first ring and said nothing. I'm coming to you, he said. I'm fine. Caitlin. I said I'm fine, Min-jae. A pause. Rain in the background. Go back to your meeting. He was already in the elevator. He found her 2 blocks from the venue, sitting on the steps of a closed pharmacy, chef coat soaked through, bracelet catching the streetlight. She was eating a convenience store triangle kimbap like the last 40 minutes hadn't happened. He sat beside her without a word. She offered him the second half. He took it. They sat in the rain together for a moment that belonged only to them, 2 people who had built something real inside a world that kept trying to classify them. Then she said, she recognized the bracelet. I know. She thought I stole it. I know. She looked at him. Min-jae, when are you going to tell them? He didn't answer immediately. That was his tell, not silence, but the breath before the silence. Caitlin had learned to read it like a language. It's not about shame, he said. Then what is it about? He looked at the street. Protection. She didn't push. That was the thing about Caitlin. She knew when a wall was load-bearing and when to stop. But Min-jae felt it. The distance that hadn't been there this morning. Paper-thin, but there. He had built his own empire, 3 companies, no family money, no Daejong name on the door. Precisely, so he would never owe his father anything. So he could love who he wanted, how he wanted, without clearance. But Ji-hoon had eyes everywhere. And introducing Caitlin before he had neutralized Ji-hoon was not protection. It was exposure. He couldn't tell her that yet. So he said nothing, and the rain kept falling, and the distance stayed. She went home alone that night. He let her because pushing would have been about making himself feel better, and Caitlin deserved better than that. He sat in his car outside her building for 11 minutes. Then he drove to the one place he always went when Ji-hoon's shadow got too close. His father's old study. Now a private office.
Locked.
His name on nothing. He pulled out a folder. Inside, surveillance reports, financial transfers, a paper trail that went back 19 years. Ji-hoon had been building something in the dark for a long time. Min-jae had been building something too.
He was almost ready.
Almost was the problem. Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked all of Seoul, Seo Yun Kong was laughing about the incident with Harin over champagne. You should have seen her face, Seo Yun said. Just standing there, in a chef coat. Harin smiled, watching her over the rim of the glass. Did she say anything? Something about a contract. I didn't listen. Seo Yun waved her hand. Ji-hoon was right. Min-jae has always had terrible judgment. Harin set down her glass carefully. He was there tonight? Somewhere. Board meeting, apparently. Seo Yun shrugged. He didn't even stay for his own family's event. That's so, Min-jae. Harin nodded slowly. She pulled out her phone under the table and typed one message. She was there. He brought her. 3 seconds later, a reply.
Good.
Let it play out. She locked the screen and smiled at Seo Yun. Tell me everything, Harin said. My lovelies, Harin just reported back to someone. You already know who. Drop a comment. Is Seo Yun dangerous, or is she just being used? Subscribe if you're not already. The next scene is where Ji-hoon steps into the light, and nothing will be the same after it. Ji-hoon's office was on the 43rd floor of Daejong Tower. No family photos. No awards on the wall. Just clean lines, a desk that cost more than most people's cars, and a view of Seoul that made everything below look like it could be rearranged. He was standing at the window when Harin walked in. She left alone, Harin said. He followed 20 minutes later. They didn't go back inside. I know. He didn't turn around. I watched the video. Seo Yun made it worse than necessary. Seo Yun always does. He said it without irritation, like a man describing weather. That's why she's useful. Harin set her clutch on the chair. Min-jae is going to move faster now. The humiliation will push him. Good. Now he turned. Let him move. A man running towards something stops watching his back. Ji-hoon was not what people expected when they imagined a villain. He was warm. Genuinely warm. The kind of man who remembered your coffee order and your mother's name and the thing you said 6 months ago that you thought nobody heard. Boardrooms loved him. The patriarch adored him. Seo Yun would walk through fire for him. That was the work of 19 years. He crossed the room, poured 2 glasses of water, not wine, never alcohol when he was thinking, and handed one to Harin. The arranged marriage meeting is next Friday, he said. Father confirmed it this morning. Min-jae won't agree. He doesn't have to agree. He has to show up. Ji-hoon sat. Once he's in that room with you and the patriarch, the optics are set. The press will do the rest. Harin looked at him. And the girl? Caitlin. He said her name like he'd been saying it for years. She stays exactly where she is. Confused. Unintroduced. Waiting for a man who keeps telling her it's about protection. Is that what he told her? It's what he believes. Ji-hoon picked up his glass. Min-jae is the kind of man who thinks love is a fortress. He doesn't realize he built it on my land. The Daejong Group patriarch, Kang Sung-won, was 71 years old and looked 60. He was not a cruel man. That was the complicated part. He had built Daejong from a mid-sized trading company into a conglomerate that touched steel, pharmaceuticals, media, and shipping. He had done it with discipline and a talent for reading rooms. He had also, 23 years ago, dismantled a rival company so efficiently that its owner, a man named Choi Byung-soo, had died of a stroke 2 years later with nothing left to his name. He had not done it illegally. He had simply been better. What he did not know, what nobody in the family knew, was that Ji-hoon was Choi Byung-soo's son. Different mother, different name, 19 years of patience. Someone had welcomed him like a gift, loved him like a son, trusted him like an heir. And Ji-hoon had let him. Every single day. Caitlin found out about the arranged marriage on a Tuesday. Not from Min-jae. From a gossip column. She was between prep shifts, phone face up on the stainless steel counter, when the notification came through, a tabloid site she'd never followed, pushed by an algorithm that had decided she needed to know. Kang Min-jae of the Independent Kong Holdings spotted entering Daejong Tower. Insider sources confirm arranged marriage talks with Yoon Harin of Yoon Capital underway. There was a photo. Min-jae, suit jacket over his arm, walking through the lobby. Face neutral. Unreadable. She stared at it for a long time. Then she put the phone face down and went back to work. Her hand was steady on the knife. That was the scariest part, even she noticed it. Here's something worth knowing. In South Korea, strategic marriage alliances between chaebol families have historically been so common that economists have a term for it: matrimonial mergers. Studies show these marriages have shaped the control of major Korean industries for decades. Love in these rooms has always been a liability. Min-jae called that evening. She picked up. You saw it, he said. Yes. It's not what it looks like. Then tell me what it looks like from where you're standing. Her voice was even. No accusation. Just a woman who had decided she deserved a straight answer. He was quiet for 3 seconds too long. I can't explain everything right now, he said. Not on the phone. Min-jae. She sat down. I have been patient. I have not pushed. I have not asked for a wedding date or a family dinner or even a photograph together. I have given you every room you asked for. A pause. I am asking you now directly. Is there an arranged marriage? My father wants one. And you? I want you. She closed her eyes. That's not an answer, she said. He said nothing. She hung up. Min-jae drove to her apartment. She didn't answer the door. He stood in the hallway for 4 minutes, hand raised, not knocking again. He understood. Pushing a door that someone had chosen to close was not love. It was ego dressed up as devotion. He drove home. He pulled out the folder again. Inside, behind the financial documents and the surveillance reports, there was something he'd kept for years. A photograph, grainy, pulled from old family video footage he'd had digitized a decade ago. A lake. A capsized boat. His sister, 12 years old, going under. And a girl, maybe 9, maybe 10, already in the water before any adult moved. He had been 9. Standing on the dock, screaming, unable to swim. The girl had pulled Seo-yun to the shallows. Then she'd looked back at the dock, straight at him, just for a second, before adults swarmed and the chaos swallowed everything. He had never forgotten that face. He had not known her name until he walked into a catering pitch meeting 2 years ago and watched Caitlin Spencer set up her presentation with the same quiet decisiveness she'd had in that water. He hadn't told her. He knew how it sounded. I fell in love with you because you saved my sister 20 years ago. He knew it would terrify her, make her question everything. So he carried it alone, the way he carried most things. Seo-yun did not know any of this. What Seo-yun knew was that Harin had called her at 10 that morning, voice bright and certain, saying, "The girl Min-jae has been seeing. I found out who she is." Who? The caterer from the gala. Seo-yun went silent for a full 3 seconds.
Then she laughed.
It was the wrong response. She would understand that later, much later, when it was too late for the understanding to matter. But in that moment, she laughed, because the idea that her brother, a Kong, a man whose name opened every door in Seoul, had chosen a caterer, a woman Seo Yun herself had thrown out of an event, was so absurd it short-circuited everything else. He can't be serious, she said. He brought her as his date, Harin said carefully, before she changed into the uniform. The laughter stopped. Seo Yun remembered the bracelet. White gold. 3 stones. She had seen that piece before. In her mother's jewelry records. A custom order. Min Jae had commissioned it. Her jaw tightened. She was wearing his bracelet, Seo Yun said. Not a question. Yes. A long silence. He wouldn't. But even as she said it, something in her chest knew differently. This was exactly the kind of thing Min Jae would do. Quiet. Deliberate. Entirely on his own terms. Seo Yun. Harin's voice dropped. If this goes public before the arranged marriage is confirmed, your father will be humiliated. The Yoon family will pull out. Everything Ji-hoon has been working to secure. I know. Her voice hardened. I'll handle it. She didn't call Min Jae. She called Ji-hoon. He picked up on the second ring, voice warm, unhurried. The voice he only ever used with her. I heard, he said, before she could speak. What do we do? A pause. Measured. Like a man who already knew the answer but wanted her to feel like they'd arrived at it together. Nothing yet, Ji-hoon said. Let Min Jae come to the meeting Friday. Let him sit across from Harin and father. Whatever he's building with this woman, let it feel unstable. Let her feel it too. And if she goes to the press? She won't. He said it with certainty. She's not that kind of woman. Seo Yun frowned. How do you know what kind of woman she is? A half second. The only crack. I don't, Ji-hoon said smoothly. But Min Jae would never choose someone reckless. That's the problem with him. He always chooses well. A beat. Except the timing. Seo Yun exhaled. Okay. Trust me, Seo Yun. I always do, she said. She hung up. Down the hall, in his 43rd floor office, Ji-hoon set down his phone. He already knew what kind of woman Caitlin was. He had known for 8 months the exact length of time it had taken her to land the Daejeon catering contract. He had read every document, every proposal, every reference letter. He had been the one to approve the contract. He had put her in that building on purpose. Caitlin didn't call him back for 4 days. She worked, open at 6, close at 10, hands in everything, stock, scheduling, a new menu proposal for a corporate client in Gangnam. Her team noticed she was quieter than usual. Nobody said anything. They knew better. On the 5th day, Min Jae walked into her restaurant at 7:40 in the morning before the doors opened. He had a key. She had given it to him 14 months ago. She was at the prep counter, breaking down a whole fish, back to the door. She heard him, didn't turn around. You should have called first, she said. You wouldn't have answered. True. She kept working. He sat on the stool across the counter and watched her. He didn't try to fill the silence with explanation or apology. That was the thing about Min Jae. When he was wrong, he didn't perform remorse. He just showed up and waited to be told where the damage was. She set down the knife, turned around, looked at him the way you look at someone you love and are furious at simultaneously, like 2 fires burning in the same room.
Friday, she said.
You went to that meeting. Yes. And sat across from her. Yes. And your father believes you're considering it. Min Jae held her gaze. My father believes what Ji-hoon has spent years making him believe. She crossed her arms. That's not an answer, Min Jae. That's a redirect. He stood up, came around the counter, stopped 2 feet from her because he knew better than to close that distance without permission. I need 3 more weeks, he said. For what? To finish something. What something? His jaw tightened. Something that keeps you safe. Her eyes held his for a long moment. Then she laughed, short, dry, the laugh of a woman who has just recognized a pattern. You know what the most dangerous thing a man can say to a woman is? She said. I'm doing this to protect you. Because it means you've already made a decision about my life without consulting me. He didn't flinch. I know. Then stop. She told him about the 4 days. Not emotionally, clinically. What she had thought. What she had almost decided. How close she had come to packing the bracelet into a box and leaving it at his office with no note. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. She nodded once. He told her about Ji-hoon. Not everything, not the full scope of what he suspected, not the 19 years, not the documents in the folder, but enough. He told her that his stepbrother had been systematically moving pieces inside Daejeon for years. That the arranged marriage wasn't his father's idea, it was Ji-hoon's, engineered to look like it. That introducing Caitlin publicly before Ji-hoon was neutralized would make her a target. She listened. When he finished, the kitchen was very quiet. "How long have you known this?" she asked. "Long enough." Min-jae. "How long?" 3 years. She absorbed that. 3 years of carrying something this heavy, alone, while building a life with her on the side of it. "You should have told me," she said. "Yes. I'm not someone you protect from information. I'm someone you protect with information." He nodded slowly, like a man understanding something he should have understood much earlier. "I know that now," he said. She picked up the knife again, went back to the fish. 3 weeks, she said. "Then I meet your family. On my terms." He exhaled, quiet, controlled. But she heard it. "On your terms," he agreed. "My lovelies," she said, "protect me with information, not from it." Drop that in the comments. Is Caitlin the strongest character in this story right now?
Tell me.
And subscribe if you're not already. The mafia romance you didn't know you needed just shifted into a completely different gear. 3 days later, Caitlin's restaurant was reviewed in a national food publication. 1 star. Anonymous critic. The review cited inconsistent plating, questionable sourcing, and a lack of culinary identity. Every single claim was false. She knew it. Her regulars knew it. 3 chefs who had eaten there privately sent her messages within hours. The review read wrong, they said. Too specific in the wrong places. Like someone had been briefed. She didn't tell Min-jae immediately. She pulled her bookings for the week. Down 30% in 2 days. A reservation from a hotel chain. 6 months of potential corporate catering quietly canceled with no reason given. She sat in her empty dining room at midnight and looked at the numbers. In South Korea's ultra-competitive restaurant industry, a single negative review from a major publication can reduce a restaurant's foot traffic by up to 40% within 72 hours. Studies show online reputation damage in Asian food markets recovers slower than almost anywhere else in the world. Reputation here isn't currency. It's oxygen. The next morning, her supplier called. Her primary produce distributor, a relationship she'd built over 4 years, was terminating their contract. Supply chain restructuring, they said. She could hear the discomfort in the man's voice. He'd always liked her. This wasn't his decision. She asked him directly. "Did someone contact you?" A pause. "I can't say." That was enough. She hung up and called Min-jae. He picked up before the second ring. "Someone is hitting my business," she said. No preamble. The review, the cancellations, now my supplier. This is coordinated. Silence on his end. But not the silence of surprise. "You already knew," she said. "I suspected this morning. I was going to." "Don't." Her voice was flat. "Don't tell me you were going to tell me. Just tell me it's him." "It's him," Min-jae said. The documents arrived on a Thursday. Anonymous email. No metadata. Sent to 3 people simultaneously. Caitlin, a journalist at a major Seoul financial paper, and Harin. Inside, a paper trail. Internal Daejeon memos. Approval signatures. Financial transfers from a shell company directly linked to Min-jae's independent holdings, routed to the publication that had run the false review, to the supplier that had canceled her contract, to a PR firm with a history of reputation destruction. Min-jae's signature was on 4 separate documents. Caitlin sat at her kitchen table and read every page twice. Her hands were still. That was the thing that scared her most, her own stillness. Like her body had already made a decision her mind was still catching up to. She called him. He answered on the first ring. "Caitlin, did you sign documents authorizing a tax on my restaurant?" A pause. "What?" "Answer the question."
No.
"Absolutely not." "What are you?" "I'm sending you something." She forwarded the email. "Look at it and call me back." She made tea while she waited. Earl Grey, no sugar. She stood at the window and watched the street below. Delivery bikes, a woman walking a small dog, Seoul moving at its usual relentless pace. Normal, ordinary, entirely indifferent to the fact that her life was possibly unraveling above it. Her phone rang 6 minutes later. "Those documents are forged," Min-jae said. His voice was controlled, but she could hear what was underneath it. "Caitlin, that is not my signature. The shell company, that entity was dissolved 2 years ago. Someone reconstructed it. The metadata on the files is fake. I need you to not send those to anyone else. I need." "A journalist already has them," she said. "It was sent to 3 of us at once." Silence. long enough that she pulled the phone from her ear to check the call was still connected. Min-jae. Ji-hoon, he said, quietly, like a man watching something he'd predicted finally happen. He moved faster than I thought. If those go public. I know. Min-jae, if those go public, it doesn't just destroy my reputation. It destroys yours. It looks like I was involved. It looks like you knew. Her voice stayed level, but something in it had thinned. I am a black woman running a business in a country that already watched me get dragged out of a gala on camera. I do not have the room for error that you have. He was quiet. I know, he said again, but this time it sounded different, heavier. Like the word carried the full weight of everything she'd just said. Tell me the truth right now, she said. All of it. No more 3 weeks. No more protection strategy. Everything. He told her. Choi Byung-soo, Ji-hoon's biological father. The company the Kong patriarch had dismantled 23 years ago. 19 years of infiltration. The arranged marriage as a mechanism, not to unite families, but to position Harin inside Daejeong, so Ji-hoon had a second pair of hands at the top. He told her about the folder, the surveillance, the paper trail he'd been building. He told her about the dock, the lake, his sister going under, a girl already in the water before any adult moved. Caitlin said nothing for a long time. That was me, she said finally. Yes. You've known this whole time. Yes. And you didn't tell me. I didn't know how. He paused. I was 9. I stood on that dock and watched you save her, and I couldn't move. I have thought about that moment my entire life. Another pause. And then you walked into my building with a catering proposal, and I... Min-jae. Her voice broke slightly. Just slightly. Stop.
He stopped.
She pressed her fingers against her eyes. The journalist, she said, pulling herself back. I have a legal team.
Tonight.
Not tomorrow. She was already standing. And Min-jae, when this is over. When Ji-hoon is finished and your family knows, and everything is done. She picked up her keys. You and I are going to have a very long conversation about what it means to carry someone else's secret about their own life. Yes, he said. We are. Good. She was at the door. Now let's go. The journalist published anyway. 6 hours later, before Min-jae's legal team could get an injunction. The documents were framed carefully. Allegations, sources claim, could not be independently verified, but the damage was the same. By morning, Caitlin Spencer was trending. Not as Min-jae Kang's fiancée, as the woman who had allegedly helped him sabotage his own family's business interests. A foreign national, an outsider. Someone who had, according to 3 anonymous sources that all traced back to the same PR firm, used her relationship with Min-jae to manipulate Daejeong contracts. Her restaurant's windows were egged before noon. She stood outside and looked at it. One of her chefs came and stood beside her without being asked. Then another. Then Sungwoo, the one who had plated the wrong order at the gala, the one who had started all of this, came out with a bucket and a cloth. Nobody said anything. They just cleaned. My lovelies, her team showed up. Drop a comment. Who in Caitlin's corner surprised you most? And subscribe, because the next scene is where Ji-hoon's full plan is finally exposed, and someone is about to get arrested. This just became something else entirely. 3 things happened on the same day. Min-jae's legal team filed for an emergency injunction against the publication. The Daejeong Group's board called an emergency session. And Kang Ji-hoon walked into the patriarch's office with a prepared statement, a sorrowful expression, and a folder thicker than the one Min-jae had been building for 3 years. Someone sat behind his desk and read every page. He was not a man who showed emotion in business settings. 71 years of discipline had calcified that. But his hands, the hands that had built Daejeong from nothing, were not entirely steady by the last page. This is Min-jae's signature, he said. Yes. Ji-hoon sat across from him, voice low, reluctant, like a man who had hoped to be wrong. Father, I held this for 2 weeks. I didn't want to bring it to you. I kept thinking there was another explanation. And the woman? Caitlin Spencer. Ji-hoon let the name sit. She holds the catering contract. Min-jae approved it personally, bypassing the standard vendor review process. The financial transfers began 4 months after the contract was signed. Sungwon set down the folder. Outside his window, Seoul glittered. 40 years of empire. 1 biological son who had never wanted any of it, and 1 adopted son who had given him everything he asked for. He had always known which one loved him more. He had never questioned why. Find Min-jae, he said. Min-jae was already in the building. He had come to confront Ji-hoon directly. No lawyers, no intermediaries. He had the counter documents. He had the shell company dissolution records. He had 3 years of surveillance compressed into something he could lay on a table and say, "Look at what he's been doing." He got as far as the 38th floor before security stopped him. For men, professionally apologetic. His father's direct order. He stood in the elevator bank and looked at them. "Is my father in his office?" he asked. "Mr. Kong, we've been asked to." "Is my father in his office?"
A pause.
"Yes." "Tell him I'll wait." He sat in the lobby on the 38th floor for 2 hours. Nobody brought him water. Nobody made eye contact. He watched the building move around him, assistants, executives, people who had known him since he was 12, and every single one of them found somewhere else to look. Ji-hoon had been thorough. Caitlin got the call at 3 in the afternoon. Not from Min-jae. From a number she didn't recognize. A woman's voice, clipped and official. "Ms. Augustine, this is Detective Yoon from the Seoul Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like you to come in voluntarily for questioning regarding allegations of corporate fraud and contract manipulation." She sat down slowly. "Am I being charged with something? We'd like to speak with you first. I'll need to contact my lawyer." "Of course. We'd appreciate if you could come in by end of business today." She hung up and called Min-jae. Straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She sat in her restaurant. Empty now, closed since the egging. The reservations dried up, the kitchen silent in a way that felt wrong, and looked at the space she had built from nothing. Every tile, every fixture. The prep counter where Min-jae had sat 4 days ago, and she had turned around and looked at him with 2 fires burning. She called her lawyer. Then she called her mother in New York. Her mother answered on the first ring, heard 3 sentences, and said, "Do you want me to come?" "No," Caitlin said. "Not yet." "Caitlin, I'm not going to fall apart, Mum." A pause. "I'm going to figure this out." Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know you are. That's what scares me." She went in voluntarily. No theatrics. No press outside. Yet. She walked in with her lawyer, answered what she could answer, declined what she needed to decline, and walked out 2 hours later into a city that had already made up its mind about her. Someone had tipped off the press. Cameras. Questions shouted across a parking lot. Her name in their mouths like they owned it. She walked straight to her car.
Got in. Drove.
Here's something that reframes everything. Under South Korean law, individuals can be held criminally liable for corporate fraud even without direct financial gain, if prosecutors can demonstrate facilitation. It's a provision designed to catch accomplices. Ji-hoon didn't just frame Caitlin for something she did. He framed her for something the law could prosecute her for regardless. They arrested her on a Friday morning. No warning. 2 detectives at her apartment door at 7 a.m. Her lawyer wasn't fast enough. The warrant had been expedited. Someone with significant influence had pushed it through overnight. She was handcuffed in her own hallway. She did not cry. She asked to change out of her pajamas. They allowed it. She dressed carefully. A good blazer, her hair pulled back, the bracelet still on her wrist because she had not taken it off since Jeju, and she was not going to take it off now.
She walked out with them.
A neighbor's door opened across the hall. An elderly Korean woman she had lived beside for 3 years, who brought her rice cakes at Chuseok and occasionally left complaints about kitchen smells that Caitlin always apologized for. The woman looked at the handcuffs. Then she looked at Caitlin's face. And she bowed.
Small.
Dignified. The kind of gesture that means, "I see you. I know this is wrong." Caitlin held herself together until she was in the back of the car. Then she looked out the window at Seoul and let herself feel it. All of it, the full weight of it. Then she put it away. She was going to need everything she had. Min-jae found out 40 minutes later. He was still in Daejeong Tower. His father had finally agreed to see him, then canceled, then agreed again. A cycle of access and withdrawal that Ji-hoon was almost certainly choreographing from somewhere nearby. His phone lit up with a news alert. Black female restaurateur arrested in connection with Daejeong Group fraud investigation. He read it twice. Then he stood up, walked past the assistant who tried to intercept him, took the elevator to the 43rd floor and walked into Ji-hoon's office without knocking. Ji-hoon was on the phone. He held up one finger one moment and finished his sentence before turning around. "Min-jae," he said warmly. "I've been hoping we could." Min-jae hit him once.
Clean.
Controlled. The kind of punch that comes from a man who has been waiting a very long time to stop being civilized. Ji-hoon went back into his chair. His hand came up to his jaw. He looked at Min-jae with something that was almost admiration. "There it is," Ji-hoon said quietly. "I've always wondered how far down you buried it." "Get her out," Min-jae said. "Whatever you filed, whatever you pushed through, reverse it." "I didn't file anything." Ji-hoon straightened his collar. I presented evidence to the authorities. What they do with it is beyond my control. You forged every document in that folder. Prove it. Min Jae looked at him. At this man he had watched and tracked and documented for 3 years. This man who had stood at his father's side at every family dinner, every company anniversary, every birthday. Who had slowly and methodically dismantled everything while wearing the face of a son. I will, Min Jae said. And when you do, Ji-hoon said, she'll already have spent enough time in a cell that the story writes itself. Foreign national, black woman, fraud scandal, Korean billionaire's secret girlfriend. He tilted his head. Do you know what that narrative does to a person? Even after acquittal. Min Jae went very still. You're going to wish you hit me harder, Ji-hoon said. Seo-yeon found out about Caitlin's arrest the same way everyone else did. News alert. 7:40 a.m. She was still in bed, phone face up on the pillow the way she always slept. Harin called it a bad habit. Min Jae had once called it anxiety with good Wi-Fi. She read the headline. Then she felt something she hadn't expected. Not satisfaction. Unease. She put the phone face down and stared at the ceiling. Try to locate the unease and identify it. She was good at feelings in the abstract, talking about them, analyzing them in other people. Feeling them herself was Messier. The bracelet. That's what it was. A calm family piece. Custom commissioned. Min Jae didn't do things carelessly. She knew that about him even through all her irritation. He didn't give family pieces to women he was casually seeing. She sat up. How serious was this? She called Harin at 8. Harin picked up, already sounding alert. Already dressed. Seo-yeon could tell from the acoustics. Like she'd been awake for hours. Did you see the news? Seo-yeon asked. Yes. A pause. It was going to happen eventually. Something about the way she said it. Eventually. Not unfortunately. Not I can't believe it came to this. Eventually. Harin. Seo-yeon said slowly. Did you know this was coming? I knew the investigation was moving. Ji-hoon mentioned. Ji-hoon mentioned it to you. Yes, a slight recalibration. He kept me informed because of the arranged marriage situation. If Min Jae was involved in fraud, it affects the Yoon families. When did he tell you? A pause too long. Harin. When did Ji-hoon tell you about the investigation? Last week sometime. Before or after the documents went to the journalist? Silence. Seo-yeon's hand tightened on the phone. I'll call you back, she said. She didn't call back. She went to Ji-hoon's apartment instead. She had a key. She had always had a key. He had given it to her 3 years ago as a gesture of trust that she had treasured in a way she'd never fully examined. She used it now. He wasn't home. She sat in his living room and looked at the space. She had been here hundreds of times. She knew every corner of it. The clean lines, the lack of sentiment, she had always read it as discipline. Focus. The home of a man who kept his energy directed forward. She looked at it differently now. She wasn't sure why. Her eyes moved to his desk. A leather portfolio, half open. She should have left it. But she was her mother's daughter, curious, stubborn, and constitutionally incapable of leaving a half-open folder alone. She crossed the room. Inside the portfolio, a printed email chain. The top address was Ji-hoon's private account, not his Daejeong address, his personal one that she didn't even have. The other address made her breath stop. Harin. Not the public email. A private address she'd never seen. She read the chain. It was not long.
It did not need to be.
The timing works. Once she's arrested, the injunction dies. Min Jae will be too exposed to move against us, without burying her further. And Sungwon? He'll endorse the succession by the end of month. He already believes the documents. The man trusts me completely. What about Seo-yeon? A pause in the chain. 3 minutes between that message and Ji-hoon's reply. She'll be handled. She's always been the easiest variable. Seo-yeon read that line 4 times. The easiest variable. She set the portfolio down carefully. Sat in Ji-hoon's chair. The room was very quiet. She thought about every conversation. Every time she had called him first. Every time she had defended him to Min Jae, to her father, to people who had raised quiet doubts she had immediately dismissed. Every time she had compared the 2 brothers and found Ji-hoon superior even though Min Jae was her biological brother. She thought about the gala, the woman in the chef coat, the bracelet, the drowning. She didn't know about the drowning yet. That detail was still locked in Min Jae's silence. But something was restructuring itself in her chest, slowly and painfully, like a bone setting after a bad break. She picked up her phone. She did not call Ji-hoon. She called Min Jae. He answered on the second ring, voice stripped of everything except exhaustion. Seo-yun. Tell me everything, she said. About Ji-hoon. About the woman. About all of it.
Her voice was steady.
And Min-jae, don't protect me from any of it. I'm done being protected. He told her. All of it this time. Choi Byung-soo. 19 years. The arranged marriage as mechanism. Harin's role. The forged documents. Caitlin in a cell. And then the dock. The lake. The boat. Seo-yun going under. A girl already in the water. Seo-yun was silent for so long that Min-jae said her name twice. I remember the water, she said finally. Very quietly. I remember a hand. I always thought it was one of the staff. It was her. Another silence. She saved my life, Seo-yun said. And I had her dragged out of a building. Yes. The word landed without cushion. Min-jae had never been good at softening things for her. She had always resented it. Now, it was the only thing she trusted. I need to fix this, she said. Seo-yun. Don't tell me to stay out of it. Her voice hardened. Tell me what you need. A pause. I need the counter documents authenticated before the trial date, he said. Ji-hoon has people inside the financial crimes unit. I need someone he doesn't suspect moving independently. He doesn't suspect me, she said bitterly. I'm the easiest variable. She heard Min-jae go still on the other end. What did you just say? She told him about the portfolio, about the email chain, about Harin's private address. Min-jae was quiet for a long moment. Seo-yun, he said. I need you to photograph every page and send it to me. Then put it back exactly where you found it. And then, he said, act like you found nothing. Go have lunch. Call Harin. Be exactly who Ji-hoon thinks you are. She understood. It cost her something to say the next words. She felt the cost of them, real and specific. I'm sorry, she said. For the gala. For all of it. Min-jae didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't, and he didn't lie to people he loved. Tell her, he said. When this is over, tell her yourself. I will, Seo-yun said. She meant it. My lovelies, Seo-yun just said sorry to her brother for the first time. And she found the email. Drop a comment. Is it too late for her redemption, or did she just earn it? Subscribe because the next scene is the one you've been waiting for. Ji-hoon makes his final move. And Seo-yun is ready. Ji-hoon called Seo-yun on a Tuesday.
His voice was warm.
Unhurried. The voice she had loved for 19 years. I owe you an apology, he said. I've been distant. Everything with the investigation. I've been carrying too much without including you. Can we have dinner? She was standing in her kitchen when the call came. She looked at her reflection in the dark window above the sink, her own face looking back at her, composed, unreadable. The easiest variable. Of course, she said. Where? She told Min-jae immediately after hanging up. He's moving, Min-jae said. The trial date is in 6 days. He needs you out of the way before then. I know, Seo-yun. I know, Min-jae. Her voice was flat.
Certain.
I'm not going to pretend I'm not scared, but I'm going. A silence. Then you go wired, he said. And you don't eat or drink anything. Wasn't planning to. She had spent the 4 days since finding the portfolio, doing 3 things. First, playing Harin perfectly. Lunches, messages, a shopping trip where she laughed at all the right moments and said nothing that mattered. Harin had relaxed. Reported back to Ji-hoon. Seo-yun was certain that she suspected nothing. Second, meeting quietly with Min-jae's legal team. Feeding them everything she had photographed. Watching 3 years of her brother's counter-surveillance marry 4 days of her own discoveries into something a prosecutor could use. Third, building the dead man switch. It had taken a tech contact Min-jae trusted, 2 encrypted servers, and a trigger linked to her phone's biometric lock. If her phone went 24 hours without her fingerprint, or if she manually activated it from a secondary device, everything went out simultaneously. The email chain, the financial transfers, Ji-hoon's private communications with Harin going back 22 months, the shell companies, the forged document trail, every journalist, every regulatory body, every board member at Daejeong, everything. The restaurant Ji-hoon chose was private, a members-only place in Gangnam that didn't appear on any public listing, the kind of room where conversations disappeared. He was already seated when she arrived. He stood, kissed her cheek, pulled out her chair. She sat across from him and looked at the face she had trusted above every other face in her life. He looked exactly the same. That was the thing she hadn't prepared for. She had expected him to look different now that she knew. Sharper, colder, something to confirm what she'd read in that portfolio. He just looked like Ji-hoon.
Warm.
Attentive. The most present person in any room he entered. 20 years of practice, she thought. You look tired, he said. It's been a difficult week. For all of us. He poured her water. She watched his hands and settled back. I wanted to see you, because I feel I've kept you at a distance during all of this. That wasn't fair. You were busy, she said. The investigation is nearly resolved. He said it smoothly. The trial moves forward. The evidence is strong. Min-jae will have to answer for what he's done, and then the family can begin to. Can I ask you something? She said. He smiled. Always. Haran. She watched his face. One blink. That was all. How long have you known her? Really known her? A pause. Measured precisely. We've been friendly for years through the business connection. Ji-hoon. She said his name the way he had always said hers. Warm. Direct. Like a door opening. I'm not Haran's friend asking. I'm her sister asking. How long? Something moved behind his eyes.
Fast. Gone. For years, he said.
Is she in love with you? Seo-yun. Are you in love with her? He looked at her for a long moment. She held his gaze. The table between them felt very wide. Then Ji-hoon set down his glass and leaned forward slightly. You found something, he said. Not a question. She said nothing. At my apartment. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to her. I should have been more careful. You've always been too curious. A pause. What did you read? Enough. He studied her face. She kept it still. Still as the water in his glass. Still as the room around them. Then he sat back. And smiled. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile, and felt cold. You know what I've always found remarkable about you, he said. You are genuinely the most loyal person I've ever known. It's not intelligence you lack. It's suspicion. You simply cannot imagine that someone you love would use you. He tilted his head. It's a beautiful quality. It made everything very simple. The warmth was gone from his voice. Not replaced by cruelty, that would have been easier. It was replaced by nothing. A flatness. The voice of a man removing a costume he no longer needed. Your father destroyed mine, he said. He took everything Choi Byung-soo had built and absorbed it, and your father didn't even remember his name 5 years later. My father died, with nothing. I was 5 years old, and the only thing my mother could think of was getting married to my father's killer and giving birth to 2 Inkels along the way. Seo-yun didn't move. So, I built something back, Ji-hoon said. 20 years. And oh, I was patient. I was careful. I gave your father a son he could trust more than his own blood, and he did. I gave you a brother you would die for, and you would have.
He paused.
The only variable I couldn't fully control was Min-jae. He saw me too clearly from the beginning. And then he found that woman, and I knew, a slight tightening around his eyes. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous. A man with something to protect is predictable. So you targeted her, Seo-yun said. Her voice was steady. She was surprised by how steady it was. I put her in position, and you did most of the work, Seo-yun, even though you weren't really useful, but I'll give you that. He shrugged. She's strong. I respect that. It made her more useful as a target than a weak woman would have been. The narrative was better. Foreign national. Black woman.
Fraud.
It writes itself in a way that takes years to unwrite. She saved my life, Seo-yun said. Something crossed his face.
Brief.
I know, he said. That's why I felt something the first time. But sentiment is a luxury, Seo-yun. I gave it up a long time ago. He reached into his jacket. She felt her body tighten. He set a phone on the table between them. Your conversations with Min-jae from the last 4 days, he said. The photographs you sent him. The meetings with his legal team. He watched her face. Did you think I didn't have eyes on you? You're not a variable I'd leave unwatched once you started asking the wrong questions. She looked at the phone. Then at him. So what now? She asked. Now. Ji-hoon said quietly. You become the liability. And I handle liabilities the same way your father taught me to, efficiently, and without sentiment. She activated the dead man's switch under the table. Secondary device. Thumb on the screen. 3 seconds.
Done.
She watched his face while she did it. He didn't notice. I want you to know something, she said. He waited. I spent 19 years defending you to everyone who had doubts. I compared Min-jae to you, and found him lacking every single time. I gave you every piece of access, every piece of loyalty, every piece of love I had. Her voice didn't waver. And I want you to know that the thing that undid you wasn't Min-jae's surveillance, or Caitlyn's strength, or my father's lawyers. She held his eyes. It was a portfolio you left half open on a desk. Because somewhere underneath all of it, Ji-hoon, you wanted to be known. He was very still. The switch is already active, she said. It went out 3 seconds ago. Every document, every email, every transfer, every regulator, journalist, and board member. Something moved across his face that she had never seen there before. Not anger.
Fear.
Real, unmanaged fear. He stood up fast. His chair went back. His hand came across the table. Min-jae came through the door. He had been outside the entire time, listening, waiting for the moment Ji-hoon moved toward her. He crossed the room in 4 steps. My lovelies, she activated it. She did it while looking him in the eye. Drop a comment right now. What was going through your mind when Ji-hoon said she was the easiest variable? And subscribe. The next scene is the finale. The trial. The truth. And an ending that will wreck you in the best possible way. The aftermath moved fast. Ji-hoon was detained that night. Harin 40 minutes later, her private residence, 2 detectives, no cameras tipped off this time. Min-jae had made sure of that. She deserved no audience for her arrest the way Caitlin had been given one. The documents hit every major outlet simultaneously. Financial regulators opened an emergency session. 3 Daejeon board members who had been Ji-hoon's appointments submitted resignations before midnight. Someone, the patriarch, the man who had welcomed a viper into his home and called it a son, sat alone in his study and did not come out until morning. Min-jae did not go to him that night. There would be time for that. First, he had to get to Caitlin. The detention center was not a place that bent easily. Min-jae's legal team had been pushing for emergency bail revision since the documents went public. The forged evidence was now a matter of public record. The prosecution's case had collapsed in real time on every major news channel. It still took until 2 in the morning. Paperwork. Process. A system that moved at its own speed regardless of what the world outside was doing. She walked out at 2:17 a.m. Blazer still straight. Bracelet on her wrist. She had been inside for 9 days. Min-jae was standing at the bottom of the steps. No team. No security. No cameras. He had swept the area. Just him, in a dark coat, in the cold, looking up at her the way he'd looked at her from a dock 23 years ago. Completely helpless. Completely certain. She walked down the steps and stopped in front of him. He didn't reach for her first. He waited. She looked at his face. Read it the way she had learned to, not the words, not the surface, but the thing underneath. The exhaustion. The relief so large it had nowhere to go. The guilt he would carry for a long time, because that was who he was. She stepped forward and put her arms around him. He held on like a man who had been told he could finally stop running. Neither of them said anything for a long time. The trial lasted 4 days. Ji-hoon's legal team was excellent. They were also working against 22 months of documented evidence, a dead man's switch that had delivered everything simultaneously to parties with conflicting interests, ensuring that suppression was impossible, and a prosecution that had Seo Yoon-kong sitting in the witness box telling the truth, with the specific devastation of a woman who had loved the defendant and was no longer willing to. She was the best witness they had. Not because she was dramatic, because she was precise.
Date. Time.
Conversation.
Document.
She had spent 19 years paying close attention to Ji-hoon Kong, and she turned that attention into a record that his lawyers could not dismantle. Harin took a deal on day 2. She gave everything, the full timeline of her relationship with Ji-hoon, the coordination of the arranged marriage scheme, her role in the media campaign against Caitlin, the names of the contacts inside the financial crimes unit who had expedited the arrest warrant. In exchange, she received a reduced sentence. She did not look at Ji-hoon when she testified. He did not look at her. Caitlin sat in the gallery for all 4 days. She had debated not coming. Her lawyer had suggested it. The optics were complicated. The press was still circling. A black woman visibly present at a Korean corporate fraud trial would generate its own narrative. She came anyway. That was who she was. She sat in the 3rd row. Dark blazer. Hair natural. Bracelet on her wrist. She watched the proceedings with the focused attention of a woman who had been a character in this story without her consent and was now insisting on being a witness to its end. On day 3, Ji-hoon's lawyer put forward a motion challenging the admissibility of the dead man's switch data. The judge took 40 minutes.
Denied.
Ji-hoon, from the defendant's table, looked across the gallery and found Caitlin's eyes. He held them for 3 seconds. She didn't look away. He looked away first. On the morning of day 4, before the verdict, something happened that nobody had planned. Seo-yeon walked to where Caitlin was sitting in the gallery. She sat down beside her. The room noticed. Phones came up. Old habit unstoppable. Two women who had been on opposite sides of a viral video, sitting together in the same row of a courtroom. Seo-Yun did not perform the moment. She did not make a speech. She looked at her hands for a moment, then looked at Caitlin. "I owe you more than an apology," she said. "But I'm starting there." Caitlin looked at her. This woman who had humiliated her in front of 500 people, who had called security and watched her be escorted out into the rain and laughed about it over champagne, who had spent months helping Haran without knowing what she was helping, who had sat in a restaurant across from a man she loved and let him tell her she was nothing and activated a switch that brought him down while looking him in the eye. "I know you saved me," Seo-Yun said quietly. 23 years ago. "I know it was you." Caitlin was quiet for a moment. "I didn't save you because you deserved it," she said. "I saved you because you needed it." A pause. "It's not the same thing." Seo-Yun absorbed that. "No," she said. "It's not." She paused. "Is there a version of this where—" "I don't know yet," Caitlin said. "Ask me in a year." Seo-Yun nodded. It was the honest answer. She respected it. The verdict came at 11:43 a.m. Kang Ji-hoon.
Guilty.
Corporate fraud.
Forgery.
Criminal conspiracy. Unlawful manipulation of judicial process. Yoon Harin. Guilty on all counts she had not covered in her deal. Sentenced separately. The room moved. Reporters surged. Ji-hoon stood as the verdict was read, perfectly still, perfectly composed, giving them nothing, except once. For 1 second, his eyes found Min-jae. And Min-jae looked back at him with something that wasn't triumph, wasn't satisfaction. Just a man who had spent 3 years waiting to stop watching his back. Ji-hoon was escorted out. The room exhaled. Min-jae found Caitlin in the corridor outside. She was leaning against the wall, eyes closed, head back. Just breathing. He stopped beside her. She opened one eye. "It's done," he said. "I know." She closed it again. "I heard." He stood beside her and leaned against the same wall. "I want to tell you something," he said. When I was 9 years old, standing on that dock, watching you in that water," he stopped. Started again. "I couldn't move. I couldn't swim. I couldn't do anything except stand there and watch you save her." A pause. "I have spent my entire adult life making sure I am never that helpless again. And then Ji-hoon put you in a cell and he stopped again." She opened both eyes and looked at him. "You found a way," she said. Too slowly. "Min-jae." She turned to face him. "You were 9. You were allowed to not know how to swim." She held his gaze. "You are not allowed to carry that." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and touched the bracelet on her wrist. Ran his thumb across the 3 stones. "Come to New York with me," he said. "You're leaving Korea? I can run everything from there. I want to build something that isn't standing in the shadow of Daejeong. Something clean." He paused. "Something ours." She was quiet. Outside the corridor window, Seoul moved. Traffic. People. The city running at its relentless pace, indifferent as ever. "I need my restaurant sorted first," she said. "Already started." She raised an eyebrow. "The supplier contracts are reinstated. The publication issued a retraction this morning. I had the legal team push it through before the verdict. The corporate catering client called back yesterday." He paused. "You have a team that showed up with a bucket, Caitlin. They're not going anywhere." She looked at him. This man who had built 3 companies without his family's name, who had sat in a lobby for 2 hours because his father's security blocked his path and still hadn't left the building, who had stood at the bottom of detention center steps at 2 in the morning in the cold with no cameras and waited. "New York," she said. "New York. And you'll let me open a restaurant there." "I'll let you do whatever you want. You'll support me opening a restaurant there," she corrected. He almost smiled. "Yes." "Okay," she said. They walked out of the courthouse together. The cameras were there. Of course they were always there. The questions came fast and loud and from every direction. Min-jae Kang walked through them with his hand in Caitlin's and said nothing. She said nothing. They didn't need to. The image that ran on the front page of every major outlet the next morning said everything those cameras were looking for and more. 2 people walking through noise as though it wasn't there, like the world outside them had simply become irrelevant. 6 months later. New York. Lower Manhattan. A restaurant on a corner that caught the afternoon light in a way that made Caitlin stop mid-walk when she first saw the empty space. She signed the lease 3 days later. It opened on a Thursday. No grand launch. No press night. No celebrity reservations. She put a handwritten sign on the door at 6 a.m., and by 7 there was a line. Min-jae came at noon, not as the first customer, or to make a moment of it. He came at noon like a man who lived nearby and was hungry. He sat at the counter. She came out of the kitchen, apron on, a smear of something on her forearm, and set a plate in front of him without ceremony.
He looked at it.
You didn't ask what I wanted, he said. You'll like it, she said. She went back to the kitchen. He ate. He liked it. Across the world, in a Seoul courtroom's public record, the full account of Kong Ji-hoon's crimes sat in 17 volumes. Choi Byung-soo's name was in the first paragraph. The son he'd left behind was in the last. Someone read every volume. He did not speak publicly about it. He called Min-jae once on a Sunday morning and said 3 sentences. Min-jae listened. He said 2 back. It was not a resolution. It was not forgiveness. It was 2 people acknowledging a wound that would take a long time to close and deciding quietly to begin. Seo-yeon sold her shares in Daejong Group. She used the capital to start a foundation. Arts, education, young women with ideas and no backing. She was not good at the administrative side. She was very good at walking into a room and making people believe in something. She called Caitlin 6 months after the trial. The restaurant is in all the food columns, she said. Apparently the short rib is life-changing. It is, Caitlin said. A pause. I'm in New York next month, Seo-yeon said. For the foundation. I know, Caitlin said. Min-jae mentioned it. Another pause. Longer. The offer still stands, Caitlin said. Ask me in a year. It's been 8 months. Seo-yeon. Right.
A breath. A year.
She hung up. She was smiling. But ask yourself, does it end here? My lovelies, that's the story. From a charity gala in the rain to a corner restaurant in Manhattan catching the afternoon light. Drop a comment and tell me, which moment broke you? Was it the dock? The bucket and cloth? The dead man's switch? Or was it her walking out of that detention center with her blazer straight and the bracelet still on? Tell me your favorite character. Tell me who surprised you most. Tell me if Seo-yeon earned that phone call. And if you watched this entire story and never subscribed, what are you doing?
Hit that button.
Because the next story is already coming, and I promise you, it starts even harder than this one did. Thank you for being here. Thank you for every comment. Thank you for staying.
See you in the next one.